This is Friday the 13th, the game. We're on Xbox Series X. The game is actually improved a little bit. We get a boosted resolution and an improved frame rate. There is no auto HDR support in this one, which of course really doesn't make sense considering the style of the dark aesthetic. But anyways, it's a very interesting and kind of great game. I actually really like this one. So when it came out, a little bit rocky, and it's not a perfect experience, but it's really cool, and it's a nice play on the whole Dead by Daylight concept that we've kind of seen, where it's an asymmetrical multiplayer experience. So you've basically got up to like 8 kind of, I guess you could say, counselors, individuals, or well, people in a game. So it's a group of 7 individuals going up against Jason, and you're trying your best to survive as you are set across a variety of maps that are basically based on iconic points in the actual movies within the series of Friday the 13th. They actually do a really good job on presenting, a very accurate depiction of those particular locations from the films. Having watched all the movies, and again, quite recently, yeah, it's actually a very impressive offering. So like I said, one person going down as the killer, Jason. There's all these different versions of Jason too from the different films, and then of course all the different counselors, which again are characters that are fairly accurate from various individuals that show up across the films, and I think that's kind of really interesting. It's almost like I guess you could say a love letter to the overall cinematic universe that is Friday the 13th. They do a really good job of presenting a precise and fun and engaging game to play. So the goal is, as the survivors, the counselors, is to escape. You're trying to get out of there, whether that is using a boat or using a car, or even perhaps killing Jason if you get the right setup going. It's really quite interesting and a fairly hardcore experience. There's some minor customization. They do have some DLC packages that kind of adjust that more, and it's just kind of a fun little thing. There's also like some music, which you can turn off with the copyright support kind of button that they have in the game. I think that's really appreciated if you do streams and stuff, so that's kind of nice. And from there, it's quite simple. You just look for a quick match, jump into the action with others, ready up, and get playing. There is a sort of meta smaller game to it as well, as you level, you're able to get kind of new perks and adjustments for your characters, whether you're Jason or the survivors. Different ways to eliminate those pesky counselors too, if you want, in style and presentation, so that's kind of fun. So when you look at the characters, you don't really get a lot to start with. You're just an individual. You're out there. Your perks may give you certain things like map access, and you have to find other stuff within the environment. So you might find a map there that lets you know where you're headed. You might find a walkie-talkie that allows you to talk to other players. It's a really good party game if you have friends that want to jump in. You might find a flare to hit Jason with to kind of stun him, or a gun, or you might find a weapon to defend yourself, or say a little tiny I guess a little Swiss Army knife that you can kind of stab him with to escape. And there's firecrackers for a delay, and there's all these different little things you can use that kind of give you an advantage for survival out there in the world. And then you have Jason, which is a little bit different. Jason can find like knives in the environment, but his job is really just to hunt. And you might get different types of like bear traps too to use as kind of a thing to put down, because you want to stop the survivors from entering cars, collecting the stuff to fix the cars to escape, from getting in houses and calling in a support member, which is kind of fun if you're familiar with the series, or even just getting the cops called, because that would be a bit of a bummer too, as you don't want them to escape with the cops. It's just got a lot of interesting mechanics and actually fairly even and complex play to it. There's a lot of strategy, no matter what side you're playing on. And of course, so many cool, iconic locations. I'm more of just a slasher, Jason. I know you can go in for those straight-up intense executions, but just slashing, I find, is a lot more effective for quickly eliminating your foes, but of course, not as stylish. But yeah, you get some neat abilities, kind of finding out, where on the map your foes are hiding, use your different senses, and it's really kind of an interesting hunting perspective when you are playing as Jason. I think they really nailed that aspect of the environment. And then on the other side of things, the survivors. It's kind of cool that you have a bit of a fighting chance. Not only are you trying to get this job done in a number of different ways, or different jobs done depending on how you want to escape, you also have the option to kind of defend yourself to a degree, whether you're doing a strategy to kind of lock the houses down, going through windows, hiding behind things, even though certain stuff can get destroyed. And then Jason goes like a berserk mode, and he just kind of like walks through walls and stuff. It's awesome, depending on how long you've been in the match. But it sounds like a very simplistic game when you really look at it, but the game does carry quite a lot of depth and quite a lot of fun. It's also something that's just got a ton of replayability to it, because they have a pile of different maps that really are quite authentic to the actual movies. I was blown away by that. When I played the game initially, I wasn't too well versed with the movies, and I started watching them all, and I'm like, wow, they really, really did actually capture all of these locations almost perfectly well. And they play around with them, little twists and turns, and they get all the cool settings. You might even be able to find the special house of Jason and find a special, I guess it's like Jason's shack or whatever, but you might find the sweater and everything. So that's really quite cool, at least in my opinion, that you're able to, see all these iconic places. And they've got the graveyard and little Easter eggs and stuff like that. There's a lot of complexity within the environments too. Really neat visuals, and it looks way better than it did before. It really does. If you're noticing these weird little glitch things, that was just like the recording software or whatever messing up. If you are wondering about that, it's not the actual gameplay. The gameplay does run quite fluidly well. I was genuinely impressed by what this did presentation-wise. It really does run quite well. And it's neat, like knocking down the doors and trying to defend yourself and also taking out the survivors. The balancing of combat and the hunt and the thrill of it's actually just really engaging and fun. So many different weapons to use, tools to take advantage of, and even Jason, has got different weapon setups and that too, depending on the setup of the Jason, what kind of type. I like to put it on random, and then I like to put the survivor on random, just because I think it's a little bit fun to see what you'll end up with in a match. I think that's kind of exciting, because then it's a little bit different every time. But if you're really intense about like a certain survivor or a certain type of Jason, you can put the preference to that as well, and then you can have that, sort of show up more often, which I think is really quite great. It's just kind of a fun, weird sort of game. It's definitely something a little bit different and unique. It plays into the asymmetrical multiplayer style almost perfectly, and as a concept, it's actually a really interesting, I guess you could say, initial pitch, if you were saying that this is the type of game you wanted to present. It is a little disappointing that we aren't necessarily going to be seeing like content updates and stuff to it, just due to the licensing battle going on regarding this franchise and this, the IP in general. But it's still a really great game. It's not too expensive to jump into at this point. It's a lot of fun. You just keep playing it over and over. And if you want to get a little fancier with, some of the customization, they do have extra DLC packs too. They sort of adjust Voorhees a little bit, or even the survivors for different costumes. It's obviously a bit of a mature game. It's quite dark, but it's still fun and kind of hilarious, and a little bit scary too, because you could just be doing your thing, and all of a sudden Jason comes out of nowhere and gets you. And it's just got really neat mechanics, a good sense of balancing, and it's something you can spend hours playing over and over again, and it doesn't really get bored because the situation's always a little bit different. The players you're with or up against are always a little bit different, and the action always changes just that much as you're working around trying to survive, trying to deal with this crazed killer, and, well, or maybe even be the killer, which I find absolutely delightful. Once you get a real hold of the character, Jason can really deliver some intense moments of, like, crazy brutality in combat. It's just kind of fun. Again, if you're a fan of the films, you're going to be just amazed by the setup here and the different, characters that are present, the sort of callback moments and everything like that. It's really quite interesting, and again, it can be brutal at times too, as you go to the different parts of, the different places, Crystal Lake, some of the other, like, counselor places. It's just a really well done game. It's very enjoyable. I hope you like the rest of the action here. Just kind of a fun little boat attempt from this individual, because, you could be chasing guys, and then someone else could be doing a boat or a car, and you gotta keep a vigilant watch if you're the killer, and if you're the survivor, you gotta hope that you're sneaky enough to actually get out of there and survive. But that is Friday the 13th, the game.
Hunt them down and make them pay. It's all done now, Jason. Your job is through. Return to Mommy.